If everyone rebels, has anyone rebelled? For most of human history in the Western world, tattoos were a genuine signal. They said, I'm outside the mainstream. I made a permanent, slightly confronting decision about my body, and I don't care what you think. When John and I were growing up, that signal was clear. Tattoos meant bikers, rock stars, and the occasional wayward uncle. They were information. Then something happened in the 2010s. Polls show that in 2012, 21% of American adults had a tattoo. Now, just 4 years later, in 2016, that number had jumped to 29%. And it didn't stop there. By 2023, 32% of Americans had at least one tattoo, which sounds like continued growth, but it's actually now plateaued. Today, tattoos are in law firms, hospitals, and on the knuckles of the guy who checked me in on my Ryanair flight. The rebellion is now more the establishment, and the establishment is now spending $1.86 billion a year on getting them removed. So today, we're looking at the flash sheet of history, old and recent for tattoos, the boom, the plateau, the Gen Z versus millennial split on tattoo style, and the irony of a tattoo removal industry that is growing faster than tattooing itself. But I can't explore this inky epidermal layer alone. I'm going to need a man who I trust to defend me in a murder case in an American state with the death penalty, even if he had a Post Malone face full of tattoos. John, are you ready to lie down on the table, ask for a played out triangle on your bicep, and be told by the tattoo artist, sorry, mate, but we're all out of triangles?
That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to show everyone my 2010 Rockabilly tattoos. I've got a lot of 50s revival tattoos on my chest and back. And I'm really looking forward to that. Just got like Sailor Jerry logos all over my body. So yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I've as I mentioned to you, been in exactly those scenarios that you brought up in the introduction. Most recently, I was in hospital visiting a family member, and I noticed that several of the senior doctors had tattoos. And not only that, but they were making no attempt to kind of conceal them. You know, they were just walking around in scrubs, tattoos on full display. And it made me think something's happened when you can have a very establishment career. You can have a career that you need to communicate professionalism both to your superiors and to your patients. And none of that's hampered by the fact that you have tattoos, which of course 25, 30 years ago, it would have been, you know, even perhaps more recently, you might get them and you might think, oh, I've just got to buy long sleeved scrubs to conceal my rebellious side. But obviously we've just reached this point where it's become, you know, as mainstream as it gets. And what happens when that happens? And will the next generation, will my daughter Ines be bugging me for a tattoo as soon as she's able to speak? Probably not.
Yeah, that's right.
She'll just be looking at me saying, you've got tats and bottles of wine, and I just don't want anything. I don't want anything to do with those cultures.
We'll get to this because the general trend is that children want to rebel against their parents. And how do you rebel against your parents if mum's covered in tattoos? Yeah. And you're like, do you want to get covered in tattoos and be just like dusty old mum? Like, probably not. So, you know, people find other ways to rebel. But yeah, it's always interested in me because I never got any. And I feel like the type of person who kind of not should have got them, but I think maybe if people looked at me on paper and looked at my lifestyle, what I was interested in and how I wanted to express myself and the kinds of things that I'd done professionally and the kinds of subcultures that I'd been involved in and my age, then you might expect that I would be a person that got one. And, you know, we can get to this, and I definitely considered it, but for whatever reason, it just didn't happen for me. Yeah. I'm not dressed this way. I just realized this is actually a great, if you can't see me, anyone, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a singlet because it's really hot today in Berlin. But I am showing that I don't actually have at least any visible ones on My
Yeah.
beautiful white. I would look at this beautiful canvas that I would have offered. Look at this
I know.
alabaster canvas that I would have offered
have-
to a tattoo artist.
It would have had dollar signs in his eyes, the tattooist, just thinking, man, I could fit so many anchors and whiskey bottles on that on those arms.
He's just picturing snakes and revolvers all over my body. I thought a fun way to start off, John, would be to a little bit of brief tattoo history, because I looked this up for the episode and I was actually very fascinated by a lot of this.
It's genuinely interesting. Yeah. So you'll tell me a bit about the origins, but I was just reminded when you suggested this episode of something I saw, which perhaps was part of what you researched, which was an ancient Russian, like a kind of Bronze Age Russian mummy. And it's from like 2,500 years ago, and it has these beautiful, very elaborate tats on it. And I thought, how long have people been doing this, and how does it?
I can tell you.
How does it work? Yeah, great.
I can tell you. So
lay it on me.
I can lay it on you. So the oldest widely acceptable example that we have is of a man that you may be familiar with, John, and that's Ötzi the Iceman, whose body was discovered in 91, I think in Austria. I have to double check that. And he has 61 tattoos on his body, and he's thought to be have lived about 5,300 years ago, and they think it may have been part of some sort of medical ritual or process that he may have been needled and left tattoo marks. And apparently, ancient inks were generally made from soot, charcoal, ash, and mineral pigments, but. So Ötzi probably lived between 3,370 and 3,100 years BCE. But of course, Ötzi's was preserved. So when they pulled him out, he still had skin on him. Yeah. So of course, archaeologists believe that actually it's likely that humans have been tattooing one another for much, much longer than that, potentially up to 10,000 years, but we just don't have 10,000-year-old skin widely available for us to check out. And the way that it works is we have an epidermis, that's the real thin bit on top. Yep. And and that's the bit that constantly sheds. And if you put ink here, it's gone. But then under that, you got the dermis. That's the thicker layer beneath, and that's got collagen, blood vessels, nerves. And this is where the tattoo needs to sit. That's where it hangs up. Okay. And then under that, you got subcutaneous fat, and that's below the tattoo. And you don't want the tattoo to hit that, or it's gonna blur and spread, apparently. And one thing that I loved, which is a little bit of a connection to us as well, John, the etymology of the word tattoo. The word tattoo is a Polynesian word used in Tahiti, where James Cook landed in 1769 and encountered heavily tattooed men and women. I got this from a TED talk, I think, a TED video. And it's tatau, a Polynesian word, and then the tattoo is an Anglophonic modification of tatau.
Okay. Of tatau.
And so James Cook, your hero, who you have never have a bad thing to say about, and have posters of James Cook you have a statue of James Cook out the front of your home in Brunswick, which occasionally gets eggs thrown at it in January. No idea why.
Every time one of them gets taken down, I just put another one in my yard.
So apparently then, James Cook's men who were in Tahiti, they got some of these tattoos and took them back. And I think this may be one of the origins of the maritime tradition of sailors starting to get tattoos, or back then, tatous.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then apparently they became super fashionable in like with the elites, which you wouldn't expect. But then in Victorian England, the elites apparently got them because I guess they were so up and fancy and secretive that you could just get a little tattoo, and they weren't seen as being, for the riffraff back then. The Victorians just hid them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then obviously, you see a lot of Maori tattoos. I think some Native American tribes had tattoos. and I guess it probably existed in, you know, many other parts of the world in various ways too. But I mean, the basic thing is, the basic definition is, as opposed to some other form of, you know, perhaps superficially similar looking body modification, is that you're using some sort of staining element to get on the dermis and
That's right.
stay on the dermis.
It's a much more dermis focused body modification.
Yeah.
It's a much more stain and dermis focused body modification.
Stained my dermis. Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to watch how they exploded during basically the 2010s, we would say, because I distinctly remember, and this comes a little bit back to the fact that why I didn't get them. So you and I, we grew up in the 90s when it was still kind of the realm of the rock stars and the rock star adjacent. So I mean, we spoke recently. 1995, Pam Anderson stars in this film that everyone's super excited to see. It's going to be an absolute Oscar-winning film called Barbed Wire, and the story goes that she was going to need a barbed wire tattoo in the film, and the makeup artists were going to have to draw it on every day before shooting. And then she just said, I'm just going to get it tattooed because you know what? I'm hanging out with rock stars. I'm hanging out with Tommy Lee. I'm so comfortable with tattoos. I'm just going to get a barbed wire tattoo. And I think everybody was like, whoa, Pamela Anderson's a hottie. And she's a blonde bombshell. She got a barbed wire tattoo. Get out of town. Things are about to change around here.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it would be like she was kind of, you know, because she was hanging out with Motley Crue and whatever. It wasn't that surprising. But like for people in Hollywood to have tattoos would be quite notable in those days. It would be unusual if you had like a leading man who had, you know, like tattoos on his body. You know, maybe they'd have something, but it was kind of much more unusual and much more subversive, I guess, and much more kind of contested in terms of what did it say about you? You know, how did you, what does it mean to you? How did you come to this decision, which is a kind of life-changing, permanent thing that you're prepared to make a statement with your body, which, you know, maybe 10 or 15 years later when people were just getting them, they'd say, oh, I like hot dogs, so they'll get a tattoo of a hot dog. Things have changed.
Imagine if Pamela Anderson in 1995 just got a tattoo of a hot dog and like didn't explain it. Just like people would be like, she's gone absolutely mad. That'd be like a crazy person. You probably couldn't even find a tattoo artist who knew how to do hot dogs. They'd say, I never did a hot dog before.
Yeah, exactly. I just know how to do real traditional love heart with mom written on it. That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it was that kind of thing, wasn't it? Where it came via sort of biker culture and prison culture. You had sort of
rebellion,
got into the rock and roll scene probably through that, and then kind of drifted out into popular culture. But you're right. I mean, when I was growing up, it would have still been something I would have had to potentially reveal to my parents, who would have been displeased or bemused at the very least by that decision, and have, you know, reservations about what kind of young man I was becoming, which seems such a different thing from today. I mean, you know, think about those surgeons at the Alfred Hospital who are just covered in tats, and no one says like, oh, you're kind of you've made a kind of scummy choice to vandalize your body. Nobody cares. Just doesn't have that sort of gravity to it at all.
Yeah, everybody just associated it with prisoners, with motorcycle gangs in Australia. So if you got one, people would be like, "Are you a criminal now? Are you going to jail?
Exactly.
Are you going to jail now?"
Are you? That's what my parents would have said. John, are you in jail? And I'd say, no, I'm not. I'm here talking to you.
Are you in jail? Are you in jail now, John? With your, where you had, you would get a little Rockabilly microphone tattooed on your
Yeah,
on your
exactly.
bicep.
That's right. And then, so that's kind of, that change is happening slowly over the 90s and 2000s, I guess. And then by sort of 2010, you've got a real sort of picking up a lot of this. The scene is kind of becoming much more mainstream, picking up a lot of steam.
Yeah.
Very much in the popular culture.
Yeah. I think
zeitgeist.
I noticed probably in the 2000s, I knew friends who would go on a holiday, their first overseas holiday. They'd go to Bali, they'd go to Thailand, they'd go somewhere else in the world, and they would come back with one tattoo that they got when they were 18. And it, wouldn't be great, but they'd think, you know what, this is symbolic of the fact that I'm young, I'm out, I'm on my own, I'm not under mum and dad's thumb anymore. I can do what I want. So that was sort of the extent of it. It might be one that friends got when they came back from those kinds of holidays. Yeah. And then from around 2010s onwards, I think this had a big influence. I've got a few influences here. But yeah, of course, you start seeing I was in London. I left Adelaide in 2011. I was in London for 2 years. People started getting a bit more. I get to Berlin. Suddenly a lot of people that I was making friends with in Berlin in 2013 were starting to get more and more and more. And my housemates were getting full sleeves, and they were getting a couple of like little ones here and there. It seemed like a thing that everybody was doing and talking about. And I think a lot of this was driven by Instagram. So 2010s, you have Instagram, which launches the tattoo artist as a celebrity. Before Instagram, you'd have to do quite a bit of digging to find tattoo artists, where suddenly Instagram, the algorithm now in your feed getting served to you algorithmically is interesting work that a tattoo artist is doing. Also, your friends are now posting their own tattoos of themselves on their own Instagram page. And of course, they're tagging the tattoo artist and saying, I just went down to Johnny's Tats and look what Johnny did for me. And there's a certain amount of status surrounding getting a tattoo from a well-known, cool, famous tattoo artist. And suddenly tattoo artists become celebrities.
Yeah. And celebrities themselves kind of make a name for that, in the same way that they might buy a cause doll or whatever. They'll go and they'll seek out the kind of person who's got an 18-month waiting list, and they'll get like a really expensive.
Yeah, people travel good quality like all over the world. People go like, I'm going to this. I'm going to go to Madrid because there's a person there who I've booked in with them, and I'm going to stay in Madrid for 3 days and get this famous tattoo artist whose work I love to do me one.
And it's funny when I was doing a bit of digging around, because I remember the kind of 2010s as a time when there were also a lot of sort of tattoo themed reality shows and documentaries and stuff, and people were really taking an interest in it. And you can kind of chart the rise and potentially the fall of tattoos by the running dates of those series. So you start to get, things like Bad Ink and Black Ink Crew and Epic Ink and NY Ink and London Ink, and they're all like 2007, 2008, and then a bunch of kind of cropping up into 2010s, like 2012, 2013, and they're all, a lot of them are quite short-lived, but they're basically all done now. Like there's a couple that are ongoing, but the longest running ones wound down in 2020, 2022 thereabouts. So that's kind of the that's the sort of rise and fall, I guess. And they were all obviously also a platform for these studios and particular artists to kind of showcase their capacities and talk about tattooing as a, kind of elevated as like a legitimate art form or a cultural form and whatever. And no doubt inspired a lot of people to, start their own studios to become tattoo artists themselves.
Yeah, it's incredible how the art form has evolved when I think about the kind of tattoos that we were seeing in the 90s and just how basic they were versus, sometimes I see things on people's arms and I'm just like, how have they done that? I remember following a bunch of photorealistic tattoo accounts on Instagram and just being floored at these people look like they've got photographs on their arms, which are incredible. And then you have also, of course, the other tattoo accounts that I absolutely love to follow. Simpsons tattoo. There's like Simpsons tattoo accounts, and there's a huge industry and culture around Simpsons tattoos, because Simpsons tattoos, it's all about communicating your love of the show, committing it to your body, and also having these really esoteric references that only other total Simpsons heads are gonna get. It's like a total
100%.
in-group thing.
That's very true. I remember being really impressed. Maybe you showed it to me, but when somebody had a tattoo of the picture that Milhouse's dad draws of Dignity in the Pictionary game, where they basically has, it's just this kind of ridiculous looking sort of legume shaped swirl, and you wouldn't know what it was unless you were really unless you kind of knew your early Simpsons. Yeah.
But you mentioned there as well the reality TV shows. So Miami Inc. 2005, LA Inc., all these, and they serve also to further normalize tattoos, to keep shifting the Overton window. So people are watching all these tattoo shows, and I'm sure some of these shows would feature somebody who's a lawyer, and they probably were one of the first lawyers to do it. And they said, "Hey, look, I know I'm a lawyer, but this doesn't impact my job, and I love tattoos. I love the artistry, so I'm getting one." And then that starts to permeate. That starts to get into the culture, and then they start to just become more acceptable in professional workspaces. And I think we've all had those moments, particularly as somebody who's not tattooed, where I started to notice that I would interact with professionals and I just was like, wow, this is just unheard of. So again, I've been on several flights where I check in and the person checking me in is just covered in tattoos. Or I go to the you go to a supermarket and the checkout person is covered in tattoos. And I've often had this conversation with you, which is, what's still left where it's not cool, professionally damaging for somebody to have tattoos. And obviously it's all about where you get them as well. There's a huge difference between I got the name of my dog who passed away on my bicep versus I got like under my eye.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and obviously the kind of impact, diminishes as it becomes more mainstream, and just having a tattoo doesn't cut it. So if you still want to have a tattoo that's edgy, like people getting neck tattoos because that was kind of above the collar, so there was no possibility. And I guess that was the thing. It was a gesture of kind of, I'm crossing the Rubicon by getting this tattoo because I can't just put a white collar on and conceal it. Like this is a gesture of my commitment to my identity as a person who stains their dermis. Is that I put it in a place that I couldn't really hide, except if I wore a scarf all year round, which would raise questions. And then when that wasn't enough, because people were like, "Wow, neck's old news." People started getting them on their face, obviously, and then that was that was still kind of a bit, like Post Malone having tats on his face. It was still a bit it was still a bit like, well, there's no going back from that, is there? Because you've put it on this part of your body which previously was regarded as sort of sacrosanct and is so, it's the first thing people look at, and even if you got it removed, you might think, well, there's probably going to be some like subtle scarring, and so there's really no going back. At least when it was done. There's probably now the tattoo removal industry you might get into has probably come forward in leaps and bounds in terms of what it can do. But at the time, it seemed like that was a lifelong subversive commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about all the SoundCloud rappers that got them. You basically had to get them. You had to get them to be a credible SoundCloud rapper. You probably needed Lil in front of your name, and you needed face tattoos. And then
that's right.
And then that's how you got to be. It's how you got to be in that club. I have some fun statistics here as well, John, which I can get into. So key stats currently, 32%, this is American statistics, this is from Pew 2023, 32%, as I mentioned in the intro, 32% of US adults have at least one tattoo. 46% of millennials are tattooed, which is the highest of any generation.
Wow.
Yeah, in the US, 46, so almost half of all millennials in the US are tattooed. And I should also point out that I thought that Gen Z would just not get them, because I remember having this thought many years ago, this idea that I mentioned as well in the intro of, well, kids want to rebel against their parents by doing the opposite. And if your parents are tattooed, which a lot of our generation is, then, and also like Gen Xers are obviously getting more tattoos as well, not to the same extent as millennials. And maybe it's, the kids of Gen Xers, so that is Gen Z, they are getting tattoos, but they're getting smaller ones, whereas we got sleeves. Sleeves was is apparently like quite a millennial thing. When you think about it, it does sort of feel a bit like that. You don't really see as many young kids with I've got the, like, look at this, mate, I've got like a huge sleeve.
That's true.
I think Gen Z are getting, I'll just get one here today, and then I'll get a smaller one here, and then I'll get like a silly one here, and then I'll get a silly one here, and then I'll get a serious one here.
Yeah, and the subversiveness is in the, it's kind of in the whimsy of it, because they're sort of going, I'm not doing a kind of, $1,000 piece that I've got to go and spend 6 hours with.
That means a lot to me.
Yeah, I'm getting I'm having a bagel, like I said before, I'm having a hot dog, so I'll just take a photo of me having a hot dog and show it to the tattoo artist and get it this afternoon. It's like this. It's like this kind of, you're sort of wearing them very lightly, which is the opposite of like the kind of elaborate, Japanese inspired, like Yakuza inspired elaborate sleeve tattoo or something. That's kind of, this thing that, you sort of walk around and you're very sort of straight faced about, and people can ask you questions about what it means to you. Like, it doesn't mean anything to them. They're just like, well, I was out, I did some nos and I got a tattoo of a hot dog. That's the Gen Z way.
I got a tattoo of a nos balloon and a hot dog tonight. That's it. And that's a successful night out for me.
Exactly.
So some more stats here. So this is about tattoo removal. I can give you some stats, then we can chat a little bit about tattoo removal. So again, US market data from 2024, tattoo studio revenues at 3.08 billion, but tattoo removal services are generating 1.86 billion. So removal is now 40% of the size of tattooing, and the growth trajectories are that tattoo studios are projected to grow at 7.7% per year through 2030, while tattoo removal is growing at 11% per year. So that's actually growing more. The removal is now growing more than tattooing itself. So for every $3 Americans spend getting tattooed, they spend $2 getting them removed at the moment. So there has been a little bit of a shift, I suppose, let's say millennials and Gen Z as well, I'm sure, got them at a time in their life when they thought, this is what I want on me for the rest of my life. But now I don't want them anymore. And I think it's also worth pointing out as well, it's not necessarily that people want to get rid of all of them. Sometimes that's the case, but sometimes it's just the case that you got 10 and you don't like some of them, you don't like where they are, you don't like what they represent. You maybe got the infinity symbol because you were married to Ben Affleck briefly and now you're not with him anymore, and you need to get it removed. Yeah,
you need to get affinity symbol to demonstrate that your relationship was not infinite. There you go. And do you know how? I mean, does a tattoo removal cost about as much as getting a tattoo? I mean, I guess these prices will vary quite a bit, but I think it's not. In
some cases it would be a lot more because because anyone with, like, you can get a tattoo machine. I mean, tattoos are as much as the person doing it for you is going to charge you, and you can get a fucking tattoo gun off Amazon for not very much money at all, and you can go, I'm a tattoo artist, or as a lot of kids did growing up, you can just get a biro and heat a needle and you can stick and poke your mate, and that can cost nothing. Whereas tattoo removal is a much more precise medical thing that requires, you can't just biro and needle a tattoo off your friend,
That's true. It's true. Yeah. And you don't want to make the result of the removal worse than the tattoo itself,
Yeah,
obviously.
so it's much more. I think it's much more specialized. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's not creative in the same way. It's not as much of a craft.
Yeah.
But I think it's really expensive. And the other thing
They
is the other
should
thing
have,
that
they should have like there's reality TV shows where they're like cool tattoo removal studios talk about
I wonder if that would work.
the
I guess
art of they come up with all this crap about like the beauty of unblemished human skin and how their craft is revealing people's skin.
I can imagine that a reality TV series would work where a person spoke about this, getting this at a time in their life that they no longer connect with. Case in point, Pete Davidson, everybody's favorite SNL comedian, he covered himself in tattoos and is now, I think, slowly getting them removed because he was and is, I think, still covered in. I don't know how many he's got, but he is getting them all removed or has gotten loads of them removed. And he said, I got them when I was doing a lot of drugs and drinking a lot of alcohol, and I don't really feel like that person anymore. And he said he didn't like looking in the mirror and going, oh, this reminds me of when my life was totally.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I can totally understand that because there would be an increasing number of people for whom, and it might not be even that dramatic, but it might just be like, this makes me feel a bit sort of like it's just, you know, like a constant reminder of something that you did when you were less mature and a bit lame, or like thought you were being profound and you actually did something that was quite naff, which is what I would have done if I got
a Banksy.
Yeah, exactly.
You got the girl with balloon heart.
Exactly. Yeah. You thought you were the smartest guy in the room, and now you're like, oh, fuck's sake. Another experience that I frequently have now is obviously being around other new parents. And when we take Ines about once a week to swimming sessions. They're not really classes because she's only 18 months, but you know, you splash around, you get like plastic balls, you put the balls in a basket, you dunk them in the water, you sing crocodile, etc. And often it's me and a bunch of parents who about half of them will have tattoos, and I love seeing ones that there's one guy who has like a bunch of kind of Deftones and Black Flag sort of tats, like pretty edgy stuff in their day, and he's just throwing the balls in the basket with everyone else, and it's like, yeah, you thought you were different, didn't you? And now look at you. It's just life's got the better of you, mate.
he was like, yeah. I mean, it's also, we also haven't mentioned just how hand in hand it went with hipster culture as well. You know, this hipster culture. This is another episode that we need to do as well, is how, because this is a conversation I keep having with friends, is how hipster culture has changed, and that kind of 2010s hipster with the man bun and the tartan shirt and the beard doesn't really exist anymore. It's changed into something else. But that guy got all these neoclassic tattoos.
Yeah, that's right. The kind
neoclassical.
The sort of, I mean, there was a sort of Sailor Jerry era, or like Rockabilly style tats, and yeah, my brother just got back from the Pacific Northwest in the US and was saying like, it's as if that type of hipster came from there and still can be found there.
Right.
But in terms of the global spike in sort of, you know, Pacific Northwest style hipsterdom, it's long gone.
Yeah.
And so you have people who, I guess, you know, you could still have those and think, well, I still think they look cool, or they remind me of a nice time in my life, and I don't need to remove them. But I can imagine there'd be people who are like, yeah, this feels pretty kind of a time, and I don't connect with it anymore.
I suppose if you want to reveal more skin as well, when you're like, I can imagine that you could look at yourself in the mirror and think, yeah, this, I'm kind of happy with this. But then as soon as you're wearing like shorts and a t-shirt and all your legs and arms are covered in them, that kind of communicates something straight away that perhaps at one time you thought was dope. Because it was, when you did that, it was like you were putting this permanent thing on you, which expressed something about you in a similar way that clothes do. But it's like, I didn't know this until somebody pointed out that people will wear, like if you're heavily patterned on your arms with tattoos, you wear plain clothes to show off that you wouldn't wear a patterned shirt because then it's all too
clashing.
It's too clashing. It's too complicated shirt, as we say.
It's too Dan flashes.
It's too Dan flashes. So a lot of people that are really into tattoos would wear basic plain colors, and then their arms would show their tattoos. And so I can just imagine now that people who perhaps have a different kind of style, they thought this is going to be my kind of how I'm going to express myself for the rest of my life. I'm like a tattoo culture person. And then if you feel like I don't really connect with this culture, maybe you were in a friendship circle that was like really tattooed and then you're not really doing that anymore. And so then I can imagine you kind of look at yourself in the mirror and be like, man, I'd like to just wear this t-shirt and not have these things poking out of the sleeves.
Not make any kind of statement. That's right. I wonder if Ötzi ever felt like that about his tattoos. And
all 61 of them he regretted before he fell into the permafrost.
Exactly.
That was his last thought. He fell into the permafrost.
It's like, man, I'm look chooky as I don't.
If you look at the kids that are 15 years younger than me are going to look and go like, oh, dirty old Ötzi. What a choogy fuck. Maybe, John, we can tie this episode up just by explaining why neither of us have them. I can go first. I think what happened with me is that I just was slightly too old by the time that the Overton window had shifted enough that they became totally normalized. So I grew up in Adelaide. I was involved in like dance music culture, and I loved feeling like I was Larry Alternative. And I expressed myself at that time through clothing and through haircuts. So I would wear a skin tight pair of purple corduroy trousers, and I would shave my hair. And I guess because I was a ginger, I always felt like my hair was kind of a statement piece. So I'd do a silly haircut, and I would be the guy at the drum. I would be the only guy at the drum and bass party who was wearing a red cardigan and purple corduroy trousers and winkle picker shoes. And I just like felt like this is how I'm going to be an individual, and this is how I'm going to express myself. So certainly I'm still trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to express a certain type of individuality. And I think if I had started to feel like, oh, what would really add to this, and you know what I could, because not only would it need to have added to the look, but I would have also needed to think to myself, I'm going to be happy with this for the rest of my life. And one thing about me is that I do tend to think sometimes, often for the worst. I think a lot about the future. I'm your worst nightmare if you're trying to get me to think in the present and be mindful. I'm thinking 20 years in front of me. I'm thinking 20 years behind me. And so I
think this may be at the heart of why neither of us have tattoos, because we're just overthinkers, and we'd never be able to go, I'm happy with that being what I'm about. Like we'd always be like, oh, that is cool, but like, what am I going to think of that in 10 years?
Yeah, that's cool. I even just thought like, what if I walk out of the tattoo shop and instantly go, this is not what I wanted. And I just didn't think it was worth, and I didn't think it was worth the risk. The one thing that I did think was it was always my dream when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, I thought I'm going to get my drum and bass tracks signed to a record label, and I'm going to get one track on vinyl before I die. And whatever label signs my music and puts it out, I'm going to get the logo of that label tattooed on me. And thankfully, that probably happened a little bit more slowly than I was expecting. And by the time that record came out, I just wasn't really into the idea. And also the label did not have a good logo. And and it was also going to be, I was the first release on that label from memory. Hey, everybody, if you want to look it up, I can tell you on Discogs where it is, because I've had a few people write to me on Instagram recently, which has been very sweet, and said, hey, we didn't know that you had anything to do with music, and they've YouTubed my actual name and my drum and bass name. But if you go onto Discogs, ladies and gentlemen, and you put in Well-being when you're not around on Zen Records. The catalog number is going to be, I think it's Zen 001. 2008, this came out. And the catalog number, I cannot find, but just look up Well-being when you're not around. And you can see the logo for Zen Records there. It's a weird squiggly green thing. And I'm real happy that I didn't get it. But it's Zen Rec 001 if you want to have a look at it on Discogs. And so then I moved to Berlin, and like all the people that were getting them were slightly younger than me. My friends that I made in Berlin were typically 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years younger than me. They were all getting them. And I just didn't have it just wasn't in me. Like I just loved that they had a passion for it, and they're all tattooed, and some of them are absolutely stunning. Several of my friends have become part-time or full-time tattoo artists. In fact, one of my close friends is an amazing full-time tattoo artist, and then a couple of other friends of mine have been part-time tattoo artists over the years. But yeah, why didn't you get any, John? Why we're discussing it?
Probably pretty similar reasons, really. In fact, I would say I'm more likely to get one now than I would have been when I was younger.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so let's talk about this.
Because the future is now. I can't, I don't really care what I think when I'm 70 of my tattoo. I'll just be like, well, now my life's kind of winding up. So,
totally.
It's kind of like when I was 20 and the future stretched out ahead of me and all these possible selves that I might evolve into stretched out ahead of me. I thought, well, how do I know I'm not going to look back on this in a few years' time and think this is lame as hell? And, something that meant something to me at the time has just lost its resonance. And so I was always thinking, well, what would I do? What sort of image or symbol or, idea would I put on my skin that has that kind of lasting resonance? And I could never, not that I sort of poured hours into it, but I would occasionally think about it, and nothing would sort of occur to me. And then, I got close a couple of times. Like a few years ago, I was traveling in South America with a bunch of people, and we kind of wanted to get a tattoo to commemorate the trip, but we just didn't really get our act together, and then it just didn't happen. But so I can see myself doing something like that just for fun at this point in my life, rather than sort of it needing to have any weighty resonance, like just to do it in a kind of flippant way to commemorate a memory that I enjoy going back to rather than anything else. But yeah, same as you. And then I guess growing up, it seemed to be just not something culturally that I had much, I felt much I identified with. And then by the time it seemed like something I could identify with, maybe I was turned off a bit by the fact that, I felt like I was jumping on a bandwagon a bit too late or something.
Yeah.
But the one other point I did want to make was that, to me, I think you could make the argument that Gen Z is sort of approaching, like the next generation of, or the next iteration of body modification, which of course is as old as human beings, is kind of flippant cosmetic procedures, I reckon. Like there's all of these reality TV shows now about, particular studios that have particular philosophical perspectives, and they'll do, people from different walks of life will come in and get, a nasal lift, bulbosity, whatever.
Yeah.
And they'll kind of have interviews with them, and they sort of have a similar like experiential payoff for the viewer, where you see them before, you see them afterwards. They feel very happy about it. The artist, or in this case cosmetic surgeon, talks a bit about why they do what they do and whatever. And for older generations, that we're kind of clicking our tongues and going, this is, how could you do something to your body that's so permanent and whatever? And for kind of people who are in their youth and treating these things quite lightly, I guess it's sort of not that big a deal if they want to get part of their nose lopped off, or their or their boobs enlarged or whatever. And similarly, you get, like, through Instagram, through reality TV, or probably more now through social media than anything else, through TikTok, etc. You'll get particular artists or surgeons who come to the fore as people who are the best of the best, and people will go and seek out a consult with them. In the same way that they would have gone, you know, I want a Sailor Jerry tattoo. Now they're saying my nasal tip is too bulbous. Can you help me out?
Yeah, I guess there's also with cosmetic surgeon, there's also a generational thing where young people tend to try and get their imperfections sorted out early, whereas then you have baby boomers and Gen Xers and millennials that are using cosmetic surgery more to stay youthful. So it is like
that's true.
like older generations get the same thing, and it has become more normalized everywhere, but perhaps for different reasons. Like Gen Z is not. Sometimes they're doing it to instantly look youthful, which is very depressing. That you have like girls in, like 21 years old getting Botox and stuff. But I think for the most part, it's like, well, my nose is a little bit weird and I'm going to get it sorted right now.
Yeah, that's right. And you also have this strange thing, which seems to be an issue, has always seemed to be a thing with tats, where once you pop, you can't stop. People who have one tat are much more likely to get, multiple tats, and it's quite rare for somebody to just you tend to get people who don't. It's quite rare for people to stop at one. Maybe not rare, but it's very common for people not to stop at one. Similarly with, once you start, if I was to start seeking surgical interventions for my physical imperfections, I'd have a long list, and I'd start. Got one that I liked, I'd be like, well, I'm just gonna tick all these off, and I'd have 100 surgeries and be unrecognizable by the end. But there we are. That's maybe where body modification is heading now. Is hot dogs, little flippant hot dog tats, and the kind of your equivalent of weighty sleeve tats, life changing, permanent alterations comes in the form of labiaplasty, or your nasal tip, or your eyebrows being permanently lifted, or your deep planes being reformulated.
Your smaz. Yeah. I'm excited. I didn't know that you'd considered getting one. That's really interesting. I hope that you do. You've spoken actually to something that I also just wanted to touch on, which is this thing of older people getting them because they think, and I do think this is like a healthier approach, and I have thought about this a little bit myself, is I've been so precious about my own body, and I need to, protect my looks, my body style for the rest of my life. I do know a lot of older people that are Gen Xers and even boomers. I know one of the cutest things that I know is that some of my friends who have dabbled in tattooing, either as, full-time or part-time tattoo artists, because it's something that they were very passionate about, their parents wanted their tattoos, and so they've tattooed their boomer parents. So their parents just have one tattoo from their kid. So I know quite a few stories like that as well. Yeah. And shout out to, I don't think she'll mind my saying, my auntie Ilka, who I would have thought was the last person to ever get a tattoo. When their dear family dog Fritz died, she got a little Fritz tattoo. So that's what she has now. So which is super cute. I couldn't believe it when she showed me. I was like, oh my God, Ilka, like, this is blowing my mind. I can't believe that Ilka Preeby has a tattoo. It's blowing my mind.
There you go. Well, that's the kind of thing that would inspire it now. Or if I came up with just a really good idea, like, what if I got a tattoo of myself getting a tattoo and it was like an infinite regress? Then something like that.
Yeah, get the Steve-O.
Exactly. Something that was just very clever. Or, what if I got, like, you remember in the 90s there was also a kind of obsession with, which might have helped a bit actually, with sort of circus sideshow culture, which
sure.
And you got these people on, say, I remember there was an X-Files episode about it, people covered in like chessboard pattern tattoos. And the same sort of people who would get like horns implanted into their
there's kind of we didn't sort of touch on that either, is the circus freak culture. And circus culture and circus freak culture is very heavily tattooed, that sideshow thing. Carny
culture. So maybe I'd go something like that at this stage of my life.
When you said it was really popular in the 90s, I thought you were going to say, maybe I'd get a magic eye tattoo.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Stare into my chest, everyone, at the dinner party.
That's right. It's a boat.
It's a sailboat. You could get the actual one. You could get the actual one from Mallrats. You could get that. Would be so esoteric. That'd be so in. You'd be like, I have the sailboat that he couldn't see. What's his name again? That guy's built like a brick shit house now. He's lost all of the
I can't remember.
weight. You could get the sailboat that he couldn't see. What is the big guy from Mallrats called as actor? He is Ethan
Suplee.
That's right, Ethan Suplee. Shout out to Ethan Suplee. I didn't think this episode was going to end with Ethan Suplee.
Friend of the
glad
show.
that it did.
Holy shit! Yeah, he's a beefcake now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Wow.
He
Maybe I'll get a tattoo of Ethan Suplee.
You should get him a tattoo of him really angry not being able to see the magic eye, and then next to it the actual magic eye that functions as a magic eye. And then you could turn everybody out. You could turn everybody, and people be whispering at the dinner table, going, "That guy's a barrister. Don't ever hire him. He's mad. He's the mad barrister.
Mad. He's
obsessed with mole rats. All his tattoos are mole rats tattoos."
Yeah. His you should see his chambers. It's just fucking posters of Ethan Suplee in there. So weird.
He's just got Ethan Suplee and Jay and Silent Bob tattoos all over his body. Right. Beautiful. Well, that was a tattoo episode, John. I'm so happy that we did it. I'd be very excited for you if you got a tattoo. I still don't know what I would get. I think I would get something that people couldn't really see. I think I would get like a little. I'd get
just on my knuckles DPTM.
Yes, there we go. I mean, you know what? I'm not gonna. Oh, you've almost got me committing on air, John, to some sort of milestone.
Tempting.
We reach some sort of milestone, and then we get DPTM tattooed under our eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I get Junior Boost, and you get Apricot Pepsi.
Awesome. That's been great. If you've enjoyed the episode, everybody, the best way to support the show is the Patreon. John, have you got the sticker sheets there? Have you got them on hand? Show them off and explain to everybody.
Well, if you are a Patreon tier 1 or tier 2 member,
you'll be able to see this, everybody. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. And also, I'm uploading all of the eps typically in video form to Spotify. So you should be able to click something on Spotify and see this.
So you get, these are beautifully glossily done. I want to thank all the designers at iStick on Lygon Street in Brunswick for their assistance in finalizing these beautiful designs, which you put together. And now I know all about bleeds and dye lines, and they're just, I'm just shipping them both all over the country and all over the world to our beloved Patreon members. And they're also getting the DPTM collector cards. And I'm putting a little spritz of my signature scent in each package, because
Links Africa.
Links Africa, because the unboxing experience is important these days.
Yes, beautiful. Patreon.com/DPTM, or just search Patreon. Don't Praise the Machine on your search engine or LLM of choice, and you get the episodes one day early, and you get the bonus Patreon the bonus Patreon members episode once a month after dark, which is going to be coming up super soon this month, members. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, and we can't wait to see you next week.
The podcast.